Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Meadows, distinguished members of the subcommittee. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. I'd like to focus my testimony and share some information about three countries where Fortify Rights works: Myanmar, Thailand, and Malaysia. In Myanmar, or Burma, the Army, Border Guard forces, and non-state ethnic armies continue to recruit and use child soldiers. Forced labor also continues with impunity in public works projects and in situations of armed conflict in the country. Most recently, we documented how the Army forced ethnic Rakhine civilians to carry weapons and rations in a conflict zone and to dig graves for soldiers who were killed in the conflict under the threat of death. We've also documented the forced labor of ethnic Rohingya in northern Rakhine State, including thousands of children. We've received no information to suggest perpetrators have been held accountable or victims have been protected in these areas. Last year, tens of thousands of Rohingya Muslims fled western Myanmar on ships operated by human traffickers. We documented how Myanmar state security forces were actually complicit or directly involved in the trade. Perpetrators have not been held accountable. Today, boat departures of Rohingya have reduced greatly, but unfortunately that's not due to any notable change in the behavior by Myanmar authorities. Appalling abuses against the Rohingya continue. Myanmar had elections in November. We're very hopeful about the prospects of the NLD-led government, but it's essential that this year's ranking for Myanmar be objective. Despite the optics of democracy in the country, the Myanmar military remains the strongest political institution in the country. The State Department, in our view, should downgrade Myanmar and encourage the military to work closely with the NLD to end all forms of human trafficking. With regard to Thailand, in the last year, Thailand devoted unprecedented attention to human trafficking. Less than 12 months ago, criminals and complicit authorities were holding Rohingya refugees and Bangladeshi nationals captive in illicit torture camps, buying and selling them by the thousands. Those who couldn't buy their freedom were killed in some cases or sold into situations of continued exploitation. Today, to our knowledge, those camps no longer exist. Less than a year ago, Thai officials acknowledged mass graves of Rohingya and Bangladeshi victims of trafficking, and this month the human trafficking trial of 92 defendants resumed, including members of the Thai Army, Navy, and police. In the fishing sector, which has used slave labor for many years, Thailand passed legislation in December to address illegal fishing and establish monitoring and traceability mechanisms. Despite all of these efforts, however, severe problems remain. Extensive use of slave labor in the seafood sector has continued. Just 3 months ago, horrific slave labor in the shrimp peeling sector was exposed. In terms of prosecutions, just 3 months ago, a police major general, who was the chief investigator and key witness in the Rohingya trafficking trial, feared for his life and fled to Australia, where he's seeking asylum. It's important to note that he feared government officials and state security forces. Other witnesses in that particular trial have also been threatened, and we're concerned that these threats may prejudice the trial. The investigation of trafficking of Rohingya in Thailand and Bangladeshi nationals in Thailand was also prematurely closed in 2015. Our information suggests there are additional mass graves in Thai territory, and Thai officials recently told us that human trafficking syndicates are still active in southern Thailand. These facts alone, in our view, would indicate the need for an ongoing investigation. In terms of protection for survivors, we recently visited 2 government-run shelters in southern Thailand where Rohingya witnesses in the high-profile trafficking trial are being held in detention. In the last year, some Rohingya in the shelter have reportedly gone missing. Needless to say, this is very concerning, and remaining witnesses in the country remain at great risk. As of December, only 12 of 500 witnesses in this particular trial were receiving formal witness protection through the Ministry of Justice. Following discussions we had with government officials, a cabinet resolution passed last week that would provide witnesses in human trafficking trials automatic witness protection under the Ministry of Justice. This is encouraging indeed. However, Thailand still maintains a pushback policy with regard to migrants, including potential survivors of the trafficking arriving by boat. Last year, Thailand pushed boats of migrants out to sea despite that alleged traffickers operated the ships. Thailand also callously refused disembarkation for thousands of desperate Rohingya who were adrift at sea. Their boats were abandoned by human trafficking syndicates, and this cost untold lives. The pushback policy, in our view, is deadly and has no place in a regime intent on combating human trafficking. In Malaysia, last year we recommended that Malaysia remain at Tier 3 as the government had done little to combat human trafficking. We share the view of you, Mr. Chairman, that Malaysia was upgraded to Tier 2 watch list for the wrong reasons and to make it eligible for the Trans-Pacific Partnership. This threatened the objectivity and integrity of the TIP report. In the last year, Malaysian authorities uncovered more than 100 grave sites of Rohingya and Bangladeshi victims of human trafficking. Unfortunately, however, there was no apparent effort to investigate those responsible for creating those grave sites. Dozens of known traffickers roam free in the country with little fear of arrest. And this is just from the information that we've managed to collect. When thousands of Rohingya refugees and Bangladeshi nationals were stranded at sea in May 2015, Malaysia stepped up and allowed disembarkation, but this was not before authorities towed hundreds in these boats out to sea, cut the tow line, and sent them adrift. Today, those same survivors who were allowed to disembark in Malaysia remain detained in an ill-equipped immigration detention facility in Malaysia. This is hardly protection for survivors of human trafficking. Refugees and survivors of trafficking in Malaysia live in hiding. They're commonly fearful of police who routinely extort money from them. They feel they can't report crimes, including the crime of trafficking. I've personally witnessed a community of Rohingya refugees intervene to rescue a 15-year-old Rohingya girl from a trafficking syndicate that was preparing to sell her into sex work. The community told me that they could not report the crime to the police for fear that they would end up in detention. In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, we believe Myanmar, Thailand, and Malaysia failed to meet the minimum standards in the last year and deserve Tier 3 status. Thank you again for the opportunity to join you today.
Mr. Smith, thank you very much for your testimony and for your insights. I do hope the State Department is listening to your wise counsel. I'd like to now invite Jin Hei Jo.